I was always the middle child, caught between my overachieving older sister and my parents' golden girl, my younger sister, Alyssa. Growing up, I learned to accept that my accomplishments would never shine as brightly in my parents' eyes. But my grandparents saw me differently. When they passed away last month, I felt like I had lost the only people who truly valued me. As we gathered for the reading of their will, I noticed my parents exchanging confident glances with Alyssa. Something felt off, but I held on to hope that my grandparents understood what was really happening in our family. Hey folks, before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever felt overlooked in your family. Trust me, this story has a twist you will not want to miss. My name is Lincoln, and at 32 years old, I have built a decent life for myself as a software developer in Boston. Our family consists of 5 members. My older sister Stephanie, who is 36, my younger sister Alyssa, who is 28, and our parents, Richard and Margaret. Dad retired from his successful medical practice a few years ago, while Mom was a former elementary school teacher who quit when Alyssa was born. My grandparents Harold and Eleanor were wealthy from decades of smart real estate investments across New England. They lived in a beautiful colonial home just outside of Burlington, Vermont, on 15 acres of land that had been in the family for generations. From my earliest memories, I felt a special connection with them that I never experienced with my parents. The favoritism in our family started early. When Alyssa was born, she immediately became the center of my parents' universe. They documented her every milestone with professional photography sessions and elaborate celebrations. Meanwhile, my school achievements received cursory acknowledgments if they were noticed at all. One memory stands out vividly from when I was 12. I had won the regional science fair with a complex robotics project I had built entirely on my own. That same weekend, Alyssa had participated in a local dance recital. My parents attended her performance, but skipped my award ceremony, claiming they could not make both events. When I returned home with my first-place trophy, they glanced at it briefly before returning to gushing over videos of Alyssa's performance. "That is nice, Lincoln," my mother had said distractedly. "But did you see how beautifully Alyssa danced today? She has such natural talent." The pattern continued on my 16th birthday. My parents had promised a special celebration since it was a milestone. When the day arrived, they had forgotten to order a cake or buy presents, claiming work had been too busy. 2 weeks later, for Alyssa's 12th birthday, they threw an elaborate party with a professional DJ catered food and a custom designer dress as her main gift. My grandparents noticed everything. During my regular weekend visits to their home, Grandpa Harold would listen intently to my stories about school and my interests in computers and business. He taught me about investing, explaining the stock market and real estate principles while we fished at the pond on their property. "You know, Lincoln," he would say, "while baiting his hook, true worth is not measured by how much attention others give you, but by the character you build when no one is watching." Grandma Eleanor shared family history with me, showing old photo albums and telling stories about our ancestors who had overcome significant hardships. She always made my favorite meals and kept a special room just for me decorated with my academic certificates and artwork that my parents never displayed at home. "You remind me so much of your great-grandfather," she once told me. "He was quiet but brilliant. People underestimated him his whole life. But he built something lasting that supported generations to come. These weekends became my sanctuary, the place where I felt truly seen and valued." While my parents poured their resources and attention into Alyssa, my grandparents were silently investing in me, not with material things but with wisdom, confidence, and love. As we entered adulthood, the divide in our family only deepened. I worked my way through state university, taking out student loans and working part-time jobs to cover expenses my parents would not help with. Meanwhile, they paid fully for Alyssa to attend an expensive private college covering not just her tuition, but also her apartment car and spending money. After graduation, I secured a position at a tech startup in Boston. My one-bedroom apartment was modest but functional, located in a developing neighborhood where rent was still somewhat affordable. In contrast, Alyssa moved into a luxury condo in the heart of Chicago, subsidized by our parents as a graduation gift, while she pursued a marketing career. Last year, was particularly challenging for me. After 4 years at my company, I was passed over for a promotion I had worked tirelessly for. The stress affected my relationship with my girlfriend Melissa, who eventually left me, saying I had too much emotional baggage from my family situation. Shortly after, I faced an unexpected medical emergency, appendicitis that required surgery. With my limited health insurance, the out-of-pocket expenses drained my savings. When I mentioned these struggles during a family dinner, my parents seemed almost bored by my problems. "Well, that is life, Lincoln. We all face setbacks," my father said dismissively. "Now, Alyssa just got offered that amazing position with the marketing firm. Tell everyone about it, sweetie." Alyssa proceeded to describe her new job, with excessive detail, punctuating the story with comments. Like, "I guess I just have a natural talent for connecting with people, and the hiring manager said I was the most impressive candidate they had seen in years." Later that same evening, I overheard my parents discussing a small gift they were giving Alyssa, $20,000, toward a new car, despite the fact she already had a perfectly good vehicle that was only 3 years old. When I tried to address the obvious favoritism, my attempts were always shut down. "You are imagining things," my mother would insist. "We love all our children equally. You have always been so sensitive, Lincoln." My father was more direct. "Alyssa simply needs more support. You have always been independent and capable. Take it as a compliment." Stephanie, my older sister, occupied an awkward middle ground in this dynamic. She had moved to Seattle years ago, creating distance from our family. During holiday gatherings, she would occasionally give me sympathetic glances but rarely spoke up when our parents lavished praise and gifts on Alyssa while ignoring my existence. Throughout these challenging adult years, my relationship with my grandparents remained my emotional anchor. When Grandma Eleanor was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease 3 years ago, I made the 3-hour drive to Vermont every other weekend to help care for her. When Grandpa Harold's heart condition worsened last year, I arranged to work remotely for 2 weeks to stay with them and coordinate their medical care. During this time, Alyssa visited exactly twice, both brief appearances where she spent more time taking selfies in the nursing home to post on social media about being a devoted granddaughter than actually talking with our grandparents. My parents came more frequently but often seemed impatient, checking their watches and cutting visits short. During one of my last visits before they passed, Grandpa Harold motioned for me to come closer to his hospital bed. His voice was weak, but his eyes were sharp as ever. "Lincoln, I want you to know that your grandmother and I have always seen everything clearly," he whispered. "More clearly than you might think. We have made arrangements to set things right." I did not fully understand what he meant then, but I promised him I would always try to maintain harmony in the family regardless of what happened with their estate. I truly meant it. The inheritance was secondary to me. What I valued most was the relationship we had shared. Remember, Grandma Eleanor had told me during a rare, lucid moment in her final days, sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in unexpected packages. They passed within a month of each other. First Grandma, then Grandpa, seemingly unable to bear life without his partner of 62 years. Their deaths left a hole in my heart that no amount of money could ever fill. The funeral service for my grandparents was held in the small chapel near their home in Vermont. Fall leaves created a canopy of red and gold over the cemetery as we laid them to rest side by side, just as they had lived for over 6 decades. I delivered the eulogy, my voice breaking several times, as I recounted their kindness, wisdom, and the profound impact they had on my life. From the front pew, I could see my parents dabbing at dry eyes, their grief seeming more performative than genuine. Alyssa checked her phone discreetly throughout the service. After the burial, as guests mingled at the reception, I overheard a conversation between my parents near the refreshment table. Jenkins confirmed everything is in order. With the inheritance plan, my father murmured to my mother, "The reading is scheduled for tomorrow at 3. "Good," she replied. "Alyssa is counting on this. Her startup venture needs the capital." I walked away before they noticed me, a sick feeling forming in my stomach. That evening, our immediate family gathered for dinner at my grandparents' home, now empty of their presence, but still filled with their belongings and the echo of memories. "Such a beautiful property," my mother commented, looking around the dining room with appraising eyes. "Alyssa, Darling, those antique display cabinets would look perfect in your condo. I was thinking the same thing, Alyssa responded, examining the handcrafted maple furniture that had been in our family for generations. I said nothing, focusing on my meal, while a familiar sense of invisibility settled over me. Later that night, unable to sleep, I went to my father's temporary office in the guest room to borrow a book. The door was ajar, and on his desk lay a folder labeled Harold and Eleanor Jenkins, Estate Planning. My conscience battled briefly with my curiosity before I flipped open the cover. Inside were emails between my father and my grandparents' lawyer dating back nearly a year. In them, my father repeatedly emphasized Alyssa's financial needs and special position in the family, while subtly dismissing my self-sufficiency and modest lifestyle requirements. There were also notes about meetings where my parents had apparently brought my grandparents to the lawyer's office to update their will. My stomach churned as I realized they had been actively working to influence my grandparents' final wishes. The next morning, I confronted my parents in the kitchen before the others woke up. I saw the folder, I said quietly. You have been trying to manipulate Grandma and Grandpa's will in Alyssa's favor. Rather than deny it, my father sighed and exchanged a look with my mother. Lincoln, you need to understand, he began in the condescending tone he always used with me. Alyssa has greater needs than you do. Her career path requires significant capital investment. Your sister has always had expensive tastes and needs a certain lifestyle to maintain her social connections. And you, my mother added, you have always been so practical. You have your coding job. You are stable. You do not need the inheritance like she does. Their words confirmed what I had always suspected but never wanted to believe. My place in their hearts was fundamentally different from Alyssa's. I was the reliable child they did not need to worry about, which somehow translated to the child they did not need to love as much. At 3 o'clock that afternoon, we gathered in my grandparents' wood-paneled study. Mr. Jenkins, their attorney for over 30 years, sat behind the massive oak desk that had been my grandfather's pride. His expression was unreadable as he adjusted his glasses and began the formal reading. The initial distributions were standard, specific personal items to various family members and friends' donations to their church and favorite charities. I received my grandfather's collection of fishing gear and books, which brought tears to my eyes, despite their minimal financial value. Then came the moment that confirmed my worst fears. Regarding the primary estate, including the family home investment portfolios and liquid assets, currently valued at approximately $8.5 million. Mr. Jenkins read Harold and Eleanor Marshall leave the entirety to their granddaughter Alyssa Marshall. The room fell silent. My parents exchanged satisfied glances while Alyssa failed to conceal a triumphant smile. I felt as though the floor had dropped out from beneath me. It was not about the money. It was the confirmation that somehow my parents had succeeded in turning even my grandparents against me in the end. I stood up, needing to escape, before I broke down completely. Mr. Lincoln, please remain seated, Mr. Jenkins said firmly. There is more to be read. I hesitated, then slowly sat back down as the attorney pulled out another document from his briefcase. What I have just read, he continued, was the will, as amended 6 months ago, following several meetings with Richard and Margaret Marshall. He looked pointedly at my parents. However, 3 weeks before their passing, your grandparents came to my office alone and executed this codicil to their will, with explicit instructions that it was to be kept confidential until this moment. My father leaned forward. What codicil? I was not informed of any changes. That was by design, Mr. Jenkins replied, a hint of disapproval in his voice. The codicil reads as follows. We, Harold and Eleanor Marshall, being of sound mind, hereby declare that we have been made aware of attempts to influence our estate planning decisions. We have allowed certain parties to believe they were successful in these efforts, while in fact taking separate measures to ensure our true wishes are carried out. While the previously read will leaves our visible assets to our granddaughter Alyssa, we have separately transferred our most significant holdings into the Marshall Family Trust established 2 months ago. The trust holds our most valuable assets, including our ownership stake in Marshall Properties LLC, our investment portfolio with Fidelity Investments, and various other holdings, with a current value of $22 million. We hereby name our grandson Lincoln Marshall as the sole trustee and primary beneficiary of this trust. Gasps filled the room. My mother's hand flew to her mouth, while my father's face flushed dark red. Alyssa stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "This cannot be legal," she exclaimed. They were elderly and confused. Mr. Jenkins continued as if she had not spoken. "The trust includes specific provisions for the establishment and maintenance of the Marshall Family Foundation, a charitable organization to be directed by Lincoln with annual distributions to causes supporting educational opportunities for underprivileged youth." He then pulled out an envelope. "Your grandparents also left this letter for the family with instructions to read it aloud at this time." Clearing his throat, he began to read. "To our beloved family, if this letter is being read, it means we have passed on, but also that we have witnessed a troubling dynamic in our family that we could no longer ignore. For years we have observed the blatant favoritism shown to Alyssa, while Lincoln's worth and contributions have been consistently overlooked. Richard and Margaret, when you began visiting us more frequently last year, always with Alyssa, and discussions of her financial needs, we understood what was happening. When you arranged meetings with our attorney without Lincoln's knowledge, we played along wanting to see how far you would go. We love all our grandchildren, but we cannot, in good conscience, reward manipulation and entitlement. Lincoln has demonstrated character resilience and genuine care for us, visiting regularly and helping manage our care without expectation of reward. This trust reflects our true wishes and values. We hope this serves as a wake-up call for all of you to examine the harmful patterns in our family, with eternal love and hope for healing Grandma and Grandpa." As Mr. Jenkins finished reading, he pressed a button on a remote control activating the television screen on the wall. My grandparents appeared sitting in this very room, looking frail but clear-eyed. "Hello, family," my grandfather began. "If you are watching this, then Jenkins has read our letter. We wanted you to see and hear directly from us that these decisions were made with full awareness and intention." My grandmother leaned forward, her eyes finding mine through the screen. "Lincoln, darling, we are so proud of the man you have become. Your kindness and integrity have not gone unnoticed. We trust you to steward our legacy wisely." She then turned slightly, addressing my parents and Alyssa. "To the rest of our family, we hope this serves as an opportunity for reflection and growth. True wealth lies not in money, but in how we treat one another." The video ended, leaving the room in stunned silence. Mr. Jenkins cleared his throat again. "I should add that any legal challenge to these arrangements will, as per your grandparents' instructions, result in the immediate dissolution of the trust and redirection of all assets to the charitable foundation with Lincoln remaining as director, but no personal benefits." My father half rose from his chair. "This is outrageous. They were clearly not of sound mind." "I assure you, Richard, they were fully competent," Mr. Jenkins replied calmly. "I have video documentation of all our meetings, including those where you brought them in, to change their will in Alyssa's favor. Your parents-in-law were quite thorough in protecting their true intentions." As the reality of the situation sank in, Alyssa burst into tears, not of grief but of fury and disappointment. My parents looked shell-shocked, their carefully orchestrated plan completely undone. And me, I sat quietly, a complex mixture of emotions washing over me. Vindication, yes, but also sadness that it had come to this, and overwhelming gratitude for my grandparents' final act of love. The days following the will reading were chaotic. My parents and Alyssa left the house immediately afterward, retreating to a hotel where they apparently spent hours on the phone with their personal attorney, seeking any loophole to challenge the trust. I remained at my grandparents' home, now my home, trying to process everything that had happened. Stephanie stayed with me, finally stepping up as the older sister I had always needed. "I am sorry, Lincoln," she said as we sat on the porch swing the evening after the reading. "I knew how they treated you was wrong, but I never had the courage to confront it. I just retreated. I understand, I replied, and I truly did. Our family dynamic had shaped all of us in different ways. A week later, my parents requested a family meeting. They arrived with Alyssa, all three subdued and clearly uncomfortable. We have consulted with our attorney, my father began stiffly. He advises that the trust is ironclad. Any challenge would be expensive, lengthy, and unlikely to succeed. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Lincoln, you must understand how this looks. Your grandparents were elderly and impressionable. They were sharp. Until the end, I replied evenly. And they saw everything clearly, including how you tried to manipulate them. Alyssa, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly burst out. This is so unfair. You turned them against me. Against us. I never said a negative word about any of you to Grandma and Grandpa, I said truthfully. I did not have to. They observed for themselves how this family operates. In the weeks that followed, I met with Mr. Jenkins multiple times to understand my responsibilities as trustee. The extent of my grandparents' wealth was far greater than any of us had realized. Besides the family home and visible investments, they had accumulated substantial holdings in commercial real estate technology stocks and municipal bonds. I also discovered journals my grandmother had kept for decades, including detailed observations about our family dynamics. One entry from 15 years ago read, "Watched Richard and Margaret fawn over Alyssa's middle school play performance while completely ignoring Lincoln's state mathematics competition win. The boy's face when they brushed off his achievement broke my heart. Harold and I must make sure he knows his worth." As I settled into my new role, Alyssa made several attempts at reconciliation, all transparent in their insincerity. During one visit, she walked through the house, pointing out items she had always loved and would take such good care of if I felt like sharing. My parents cycled between anger bargaining and attempts at guilt. "After all we have done for you," my mother lamented during one particularly tense phone call. "We put a roof over your head, fed you, clothed you." "You did the legal minimum required of parents," I replied. "And you gave Alyssa so much more." The difference was always clear. With Mr. Jenkins' guidance, I established the Marshall Family Foundation with an initial endowment of $5 million. Its first initiative was a scholarship program, specifically designed for middle children from families with demonstrated financial need. A nod to my own experience that brought a smile to my face whenever I thought about it. The foundation also funded a community center in my grandparents' hometown, named in their honor, providing educational resources, mentorship programs, and elderly care services. It felt right to continue their legacy of quiet generosity. 1 year after my grandparents' passing, our family dynamics had shifted dramatically. Stephanie and I had grown closer, speaking weekly and genuinely supporting each other's lives. My parents had slowly begun to make tentative overtures that seemed for the first time to come from a place of genuine reflection rather than manipulation. Alyssa struggled the most with the new reality. The $8.5 million she received was substantial by any measure. But the loss of her position as the family favorite clearly affected her self-image. We were civil but distant, our relationship perhaps beyond full repair. As for me, weekly therapy sessions helped me process the complex emotions of being vindicated but still carrying the scars of lifelong emotional neglect. I renovated parts of the family home while preserving its character just as my grandparents would have wanted. A new relationship with Claire, a kind and straightforward woman I met through the foundation, brought unexpected joy to my life. On the anniversary of my grandparents' passing, I visited their graves alone, placing fresh flowers between their headstones. "Thank you," I whispered the autumn breeze, carrying my words across the peaceful cemetery. Not for the money or property, but for seeing me when no one else did. I realized then that the true inheritance my grandparents left me was not the wealth or property, but the validation of my worth and the courage to stand in that worth unapologetically. They had shown me that I mattered, that my character and choices were valuable regardless of whether my parents ever recognized it. In that moment, I made a promise to myself and to my future children. The cycle of favoritism would end with me. Every child deserves to be seen valued and loved equally, not for what they achieve or how they perform, but simply for who they are. Has your family ever played favorites? Have you ever felt overlooked or undervalued by the people who should have appreciated you the most? Please share your experiences in the comments below. Sometimes knowing we are not alone in these struggles can be the first step toward healing. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more real-life stories about family dynamics and personal growth. And if you know someone who might benefit from hearing this story, share it with them. Your simple act of sharing might help someone feel understood today. Thank you for listening. And remember, your worth is not determined by others' ability to see it.